Welcome, podcasters. You are listening to another episode of Tell Me Why, a resource for athletes, coaches, and parents in sport. Co-hosted by Dr. Ginny Cristerna and U.S. Speed Skating Hall of Fame inductee Patrick Wentland. This podcast is developed as a resource for athletes, parents, coaches, and referees looking to improve player development and performance. Conversations and opinions expressed on the show are not intended as medical or clinical advice. Hello, today we are discussing passion and what it takes to become one of the best of the best. We're really hoping to bring you the means and methods of what it takes to be the best of the best. Everybody says they want to get there. Everybody's wants to be there. Who's willing to do the work to get there? Ginny, I'm glad to have you along today again and discussing passion. I know this is a huge one for me, and I know you've got it in your sport and work career as well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we're partners in crimes with this. This is our second podcast. So, I think we can both safely say we bring different angles and views to passion and how to use it, one, and why it's so important. So I'm sitting here, you can see me with the video, like wringing my hands because I'm excited right now.
Good, good. Yeah, this really what we've come up with 6 different character traits of great athletes, what great athletes have in common, and really something for our listeners out there really to understand, okay, if I want to be great, do I have these things? If not, how do I get them? How do I help develop these character traits? And I thought we'd start with passion. This may take us 1 or 2 different sessions to really cover this one, because to me it's really one of the biggest, most important. Passion to me, it's what makes you relentless towards your goal. It's really what makes you strive, keeps going, gets you out of bed in the morning. You said it earlier, it's like the gas in your tank that you use to drive you forward when you want to give up.
Yeah, yeah. And you know what? And it's part of that thing that we all have to have that keeps us going, that gives us meaning and purpose when we get frustrated. But I think the biggest thing for those athletes and coaches and parents and just people in general in every area of your life, it's part of that mettle, the METTLE. It gives you that mindset. So regardless of whatever sport you're in, it's when you're the Michael Jordan, get cut from your basketball team and you keep going and you continue the sport anyway. So for people who are listening, to your point, the 6 things that we're going to share with them today, it's so important that they really just pull up a chair, get some dedicated time to sit down and listen and have a pen and paper or their phone, because this is like gold. A lot of times people don't realize that this is exactly what I need to do. Like there's a formula to some things, and then there are things you can tweak within that formula, and there's some things that need to stay the same. Passion, the fact that there are actually things that I we can help them identify so they can work on developing so they can stay excited about the game and about the sport even when they're tired. This is a big deal. So I encourage everybody, if you're when you're listening, get something to jot some notes down, because this is going to be good stuff.
Yeah, great. And to jump on that, to let everybody else know too, we're getting this information from what we've learned between the two of us, you and I. We have worked with multiple Olympic and world champion athletes and watched their traits and really kind of studied what they do, why they do what they do, and how it helps them get to the points they've gotten. One thing you just brought up in there was just about daily life. This not just sports. For me, it's something that, everybody discovers, whether it's in a relationship or in their job or in a sport or something that they do, that animals or activities, you find that passion, you discover it somehow. And it's, in my mind, it's easily explained as something you can't put out of your mind, something that you just have to keep striving for and doing and doing. And everything else is non or less important. That everything else in your life is non or less important.
Absolutely. So whether it's being an athlete, whether it's being a coach or ref, being a parent, being an employee, being a business owner, you have to have something that, yeah, we know you have other parts of your life, but when you're really passionate about something, that's really all you think about. Right. So if you have kids and you're passionate about your business, or if you're an athlete and you're passionate about your family, they can coexist. But it's one of those things where just because you have to have focus somewhere else doesn't mean that you don't have this desire, in, for example, sports and in the other area. But, it's just one of those things where I tell folks, know what you love to do and try to stick to that. Right. Try to follow that all the way through. Sometimes we can't, follow it all the way through for because life can be hard. But when you can, follow that all the way through. And that way, if it doesn't work out for you, you gave it everything you got. And you might find a way to sublimate that or channel that into something else, which may be quite new, quite, what's the word that I'm looking for? A surprise. What's that word? Help
It's
me out.
your passion.
When you're passionate.
Your purpose
Right.
more.
It might look like something different. That kind of passion will give birth to something different, but more aligned with what you want to do, you know? So,
Yeah, no, and you brought up something too about, as a parent, you see your kids or yourself, and this is part of like why one of the things I brought up this topic was as a parent, if you see your kids discover their passion and you'll know it, they'll know it. It's all they talk about. I have a daughter that discovered horse jumping it, and it was all her conversations revolved around, and she's learn how to train horses, work with horses, jump horses. She's on a collegiate team. She's studying horse sciences, equestrian sciences. My other daughter went in the route of movie production, and it's like it's her life. And as a parent, you do anything you can to support that kid with passion. And they're also easier to raise, to form, to mold is when you have your child that's dedicated in some. I know for my parents, like when I was struggling in school or didn't need to do chores around the house, they're like, "Oh, we're taking your sports equipment away. We're taking your skates away," whatever it was, until you get this done. I'm like, "All right, I'll go do it now." There's my motivation. But for me, raising two daughters who were passionate about things, it's so much easier to help form their attitudes, their abilities, and their growth and development.
yeah. I mean, because now you can actually leverage the parenting skills that we teach, parents, a timeout or punishment. We're going to take this away from you, right? So now here's the motivator. It's like, I really love that. I don't want to lose that thing. So let me do the things that I'm supposed to do. Let me do the things I'm going to have to do anyway. So I might as well just do it. And I tell parents, and even with, my kids, we have a 13-year-old right now, and it's just like he likes soccer, but I tell parents and coaches, if a kid starts out liking something and you make it not fun anymore, and you take that away and you see that passion just fizzle out, then you've done the one of, I don't want to call it, you've broken a cardinal rule, but good luck with that kid and, helping him to help or her to develop. Because now, what's the thing that they love the most? Well, you killed it. So remember, sports is, yeah, it's a lot of work, but it's also supposed to be fun. It's also supposed to be something that they look forward to. They're not going to look forward to it every day because it's work, but the passion, which is what we were talking about earlier, that's what carries them through.
And maybe it's like you said, maybe there's times out there where a parent, oh, my kid wants to be a car racer. He wants to be an airplane jet fighter. That's his passion. I can't afford for my kids to be a car racer. Maybe there's other ways. Maybe you can get them started with go karts or something and develop those passions and use it another way. Because what it hit me, what you said, like yes, if you take that passion away from that child, you're putting a huge dent in there. There's always a way. There's got to be some way, and maybe you can't afford it or don't have the time for it, but maybe they're willing to do a little something extra to help support that, or find a way to do it what that'll cost less money, or an alternative opportunity to let them follow their passion that's not going to be as time consuming or as expensive.
Absolutely. And I like the fighter jet one and the go-kart, alternative to being a NASCAR race driver at 5. So it's one of those things where see if they can build something and get them a couple books, and even if you don't know how to do it, just encouraging them to build little things together or volunteering or working out, with somebody at the little auto shop. Here's a couple nuts and bolts. This is how you use this, and this is how you use that. Or buying them little things to just play with and tinker with. That's really how things get started. And you'd be surprised at the direction that they take on its own. It's kind of like I might not be able to do this, but look at what I ended up doing instead, which is even better than what I thought I wanted to do. Because sometimes you can't afford the thing that your kid wants to do. Sometimes it's really out of reach. Ice skating, oh my God. Hockey, geez.
Yes, I think you hit the nail on the head there too. Because yeah, if that child is passionate about what they want to do, they will find a way. They will find a way to do it to a level that will feed their passions and will help them. If you can at all avoid shutting it off and turning off that passion, do it because they will find a way. You have to be there to support them, give them a little pat on the back, say you're doing a good job. But if they are passionate about what they're doing, man, they will find a way. There's nothing you're going to be able to do to stop them,
Ab-
um, besides shutting the door right on them.
Yeah. And this is probably a different podcast too, where coaches don't realize and parents don't realize the little things that they might do to shut the door. And enough of those doors getting shut over time that can put out a fire real quick. And so, and talking about how to spot that passion, I can't wait for us to get into the qualities that go into it. But yeah, I mean, this is really important because sometimes we don't know how to develop passion, and sometimes we don't even know how to identify it.
Two great points. And any negative word like, "Oh, yeah, you'll never be able to do that." You're not even thinking about it as a parent. I've done it as a parent.
Mhm.
Without thinking about it, and you think back later, like, "Oh, I shouldn't have put it that way." But, "Oh, yeah, you'll never do that. It's too hard or too expensive or way out of your league." Just something like that is enough to put out the flame and to kill it. And all you need to do is just be supportive, push them along, help them where they ask for help. Everything else they will figure out. If they are that passionate in it, they will figure it out. And the second point you're talking about it is the levels of passion. Like if they are that devoted into it, and this leads me on to one of our other points today is the difference. One to me, one of the big differences becoming between coming in first or second. We call it first place or the first loser, right? So it really is there's a big part of that is who's the most passionate, who's been willing to put the most into it, into their goal, getting there because of that passion. Yes, there's other things, there's talent, there's desire, determination, but in my world, passion controls the rest of them. If they want it bad enough through that passion, they will do everything else they need to do to get there.
Absolutely. But I got a question for you. Now I'm going to play devil's advocate because you made a joke about my back getting blown out earlier today.
Go for it.
My, my question is, but what if they have all the talent and the determination and the passion and the skill set, and they still are the first loser, so to speak, because somebody else was just better or it was just unlucky for them that day?
That's a great one, and I'm looking forward to answering it. And I'm telling you, the answer I'm going to give you is that person is the one who will not give up, and he will work harder. He or she will work harder and harder and harder. They will figure out what their weaknesses are, and work on those. They'll figure out what their strengths are. They'll watch that person that beat them, and they will figure out what I got to do to be the best, and they will not give up. The guy with less passion will be like, second was okay. I worked hard to get there. I'm going to settle for second. But that that best of the best, that Michael Jordan you're talking about, the main story, Michael Jordan missed his varsity basketball team and didn't make the team, just took the whole rest of the year off, the next year off, and just went home and practice, 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 and then from then on, he developed his work ethic and his abilities and was unstoppable. That's what that passionate child that or athlete is going to be like. The guy who comes in second, and we all need to come in second every once in a while to keep us motivated and keep pushing us to be even better.
Yeah. And, it's one of those things where the question that, I mean, and the reason I'm asking you all these questions in this podcast is because, people don't know, but they're going to find out right now that, you were you are a speed skating Hall of Famer, or you're inducted into the Speed Skating Hall of Fame. So you know a little bit about passion. I know your story growing up and how much passion you had. And I'm sitting here and as a parent, as a referee, as an athlete, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, but what if you as a parent don't know how to develop the passion? Like what should we look for? Because you have a book coming out and I want people to be mindful of these kind of things. I have a question because I know that we're talking about passion, which is one of the character traits for athletes to have. I want you to talk about just kind of your personal experience with that. I mean, you're a Hall of Famer, like I said. You're one of the coaches for Apollo Owner. Like you know this stuff.
Yeah, it's one of the things I look back on my career, and it's something that I use to keep me going. And so many times and I was involved in the sport, short track speed skating, which was not a mainstream sport.
Hmm.
Got made fun of in school because, like, oh, what do you do? You're an ice skater, you're an ice dancer, whatever. Kids have their thing, but I didn't have support from school. It wasn't a school sport. Not too many people did it. We had our world outside of sport, outside of school. And I get this with some of the skaters I coach now, and their concern is like, hey, I'm in a sport that people don't understand. You see it once every 4 years on the Olympics, and that's it. And I don't have many friends because I'm going to practice over here on the weekends while they're going out and doing stuff, going to movies, and they look at me like I'm different. And I'm like, yeah, these are things that some of the best athletes out there learn to deal with. And I've told them, so, growing up like myself, it was something that I had to use that kept me going. I could have gone out to the movies with friends or gone out and done things with them instead of going to bed earlier to get ready for a competition the next day or something. But there was that desire for me to be the best. I was never the best. I made it pretty good. Skated world championships, set US records, had some good results, but there were other flaws that I had that could have been better. Passion was not one of them. I had more passion than I knew what to do with. It kept me while I'm in school. I'm thinking about, okay, what am I going to do at practice now? How many hours till we get to go to practice? And are my skates sharp, or do I got to do this? Where I'm supposed to be concentrating in school, and it was hard for me because I was passionate about something and going in one direction. Where like school was like, woo,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
paying attention there. So yeah, and
But
it's something
that's
I
what a
explained to the
great
kids.
fit. It was that you were so passionate about the sport. It's just like, I don't have ADHD or anything like that. I'm really looking forward to skating.
Yeah, yeah, and that was it. I wanted to get back to what I enjoyed doing. I could have
Mm.
been on the ice all day, every day as a
Wow.
kid and just racing. I wanted to go fast. I wanted to be better. I wanted to be the best. I just wanted to win. I loved
Mm.
winning, and I didn't do a whole lot of it back then. I was not that good. My brothers, both from a year younger, year older, used to beat me all the time, and it wasn't until later on in life where I kept working harder at it because of that passion
Mhm.
and they didn't. I eventually caught them and others and started winning state championships, national championships, and
Oh,
things like that. But that is a large part of what got me there. In my heart, it forced me to learn how to do what was better, learn how to train better, learn how to train harder. It forced me to find out what I needed to do
mhm.
to get better.
And it also sounds like it forced you to be organized and real grounded and present. Like I need to keep my finger on the pulse of a lot of things: school, practice, equipment, my routine in terms of timing myself. Like, how do I measure my improvement? How do I decide what I need to improve. Like you had to be super present in a lot of environments, except for when you were daydreaming about skating in the middle of algebra or something like that. But you had to be really self-reliant. And that's quite remarkable for an adolescent.
I think my parents would disagree with you,
Uh,
but there were there were the thing. Yes, when it came to this when it came to that sport, yes, I was very organized and ready to go. But it did cause me to put it in front of other stuff that I should have been doing. But they knew how to use that to their advantage. They were like, "All right, I'm taking your skates away until you mow the lawn or take out the garbage or do whatever it was that needed to be done."
Oh, okay. So you were like a regular kid, but just a lot easier to redirect.
There you go.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay, got it. And you did well with your classes and stuff.
I made it through.
You know what? We're gonna save that for another podcast. This is
Yeah.
because
Yeah,
girls got
and a lot.
like, how do I use that? How do I make that work?
Yeah, and it's funny because you bring some of that up. It's like I know some of the top athletes that I've seen and or worked with that they don't have a whole lot of life outside their other sport, and I think they are misunderstood in their younger years. Yes, they're praised in their professional years when they're on the podium or they're winning for their team or whatever it is, but in their younger years, people make fun of them or they're not one of the normal kids who's out playing or doing whatever. They're focused on what they're doing and they're trying to get better at their thing. So a lot of top athletes don't have that normal upbringing, and it is frustrating for them. But
Yeah.
that passion is one of those things that helps carry them through it.
Yeah. My kids, we did taekwondo. That's how you and I met. And track, the 800 and soccer. And they have all done remarkably well. They've medaled at the inaugural Youth Olympic Games in Singapore. They've won states for the 800. They've gotten their practical full scholarship for college for soccer. And it's quite beautiful to see kids excel in something that they really enjoy and that they really love. But it to the point that we made a few moments ago, it does come at a cost, and it does make it hard because if they're doing a sport, unlike soccer, of course, and track are different, but if it's like taekwondo or speed skating or something like that, you don't have a ton of folks in high school doing that as a sport. So your friend group is quite limited. Your friends are more national, international, right? They're not very local in your high school. And that can create a sense of loneliness. And that's something that we should probably talk about at some point, how to help our athletes through when they're part of a sport that might be a fringe sport, might not be as popular amongst
Yeah,
the.
that's a great point, and it's something that just recently a couple of the top skaters that I've been working with have approached me about, and they're like, "Hey, I don't have a life outside of this sport," and people don't understand me, as I mentioned, and as high school kids, they don't get it, they don't understand how to handle that, and it's a little frustrating. I just happened to, as I'm writing this book I told you about, I asked a few Olympians that I had worked with to give me a few quotes of things that have helped them through their time and something they can really teach to someone else. And Julie Goskowitz Kuhn, she's a two-time Olympic team short track speed skater, just recently got back to me with this same topic. She said for her it was, she said she called it a sacrifice.
Mhm.
And she learned to sacrifice when her friends asked her to go out to the movies, or friends asked her to go out to a party, or friends would ask her to go out to do this. She's like, yeah, I really wanted to, but I knew where my purpose was, where my goal was, where my passion was. I knew I had to go to bed early that night to get ready to perform at a competition the next day. It was hard at that time, but and this is how I explain it to these skaters I'm working with, is that they got so much more out of it. Julie talked about how she went on to make national teams. She went on to make Olympic teams. She went on to set US records. She went on to tour the world with her sport. She made friends internationally that she still has today. the things that she had learned in sport on how to overcome, how to push yourself, how to chase and meet a goal. These things have made her a prominent figure in business today. So she is dominating the business world because of some of these skills she has learned through her younger years because of that passion she had in her sport, where a lot of people who don't discover that same passion never really figure out. So there's
Mhm.
some benefits you reap later in life. And I guess the short answer to my long answer to your question was, yeah. And what I'm telling these skaters is you will use those skills that and those experiences you're developing now competing at a national, international level through your whole life. And it's going to take you so much further than going out for one evening with your friends and going to a movie and missing some time out with them.
Yeah, and I agree. You and I think most adults will agree with that, and they know that to be true. The issue becomes how do you convince a 13-year-old, a 16-year-old, a 17-year-old that to delay gratification so they can go, you know what, that party of the century, I I want to pass because they're just like it's the party of the century, 1999. I mean, we might not live to 2000. Here's the pandemic, and so how do we convince teenagers of that, especially when I might have international friends but it's Saturday and I don't wanna be in the house. I mean, and everybody's hanging out and talking and going to restaurants and stuff.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that comes down to what we're talking about today. It's how much passion that child has for that sport or activity, whatever they're doing. For the kid who's really devoted and like, oh, I just want to be the best. I want to be the best. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. It's not going to take a whole lot for that parent to
Mm,
be like, hey, maybe you need to stay in tonight and just rest because you have this competition tomorrow, this game
mhm.
tomorrow. The
Yeah,
kid who's maybe not as passionate, a little more on the borderline. Hey, I really want to go out with my friends. I got to compete tomorrow. I have a game tomorrow.
yeah.
He's going to be a little hard. He or she is going to be a little harder to convince. And that's where maybe it's going to take for them coming in second, third, or fourth tomorrow because they went out with their friends to be like, oh man, we're not at my best today because I went out and had a good time with my friends. And if I'm okay with not being my best, or damn it, I don't want to be there again. I want to win next time. And
Right.
next time they make a different decision.
And now we gotta talk about the parents. The parents like, "Do you know how much we spend on airplane tickets to come out here for you to find yourself? This was the family vacation, and you've
No.
been pussyfooting around and partying all night long, and no, I mean, we just spent $3,000 on airplane tickets, hotels, uniform, and getting you ready for this tournament. Those are the hard conversations. The athlete is conflicted and torn between I need to win, or else my parents gonna be mad at me and I don't have the privilege of saying, well, maybe I need to lose. That's not an option because again, a lot of parents, they turn these tournaments and these big trials, whether it's Olympic trial or national teams or regionals or whatever, it becomes a family affair because it's expensive.
Good point. And I remember that conversation with my parents. And this is what I would tell my kid. If they're that passionate about that sport, that activity they want to do, they're going to help raise money, save money, whatever they can do to help that. My parents yearly gave us that same speech. And they said, hey, this is an expensive sport we do. We drive you guys all over the country or fly you around the country for competitions. Just so you know, Christmas is gonna be a little lighter this year because you got new skates and because we're going to nationals and because we're going here, because we're going there. That pair of shoes you got, that's the last pair you're getting this year. That jacket and hat you got, those that's your present for the year. And as a kid, talking about the passion levels, I was good with that. I'm like, "That's fine. I'm doing what I'm doing." If I had a different response, that's when that parent needs to think, "All right, maybe this isn't that thing for my child. Maybe
Yeah.
they're still waiting to find their passion."
There we go. And that's the point. I work with parents and they're just like, hey, I want my kid to be a soccer player. I want my kid to be a football player. I want my kid, right? And that's for those parents who are listening, that's the difference between a parent who is living vicariously through their kid, and that's the parent's passion, and compared to a kid who's like, oh, I really want to do this. So it's about who really wants the kid to do that thing. Is it the kid or is it the parent? Because if the parent's making all these sacrifices for something that the kid really isn't passionate about, then everybody's going to be frustrated, and somebody's going to be let down more than someone else. And then the other person who's let down, it's going to be in a different way because they are not actually doing something that they like. They're not even aware of what they might like to do. They're just doing something that they think would make their parent happy. So I encourage parents, check yourself, check inside. Is this something I want my kid to do? Or is this something that my kid really wants to do? Because that passion might be an indicator of one or the other, or that lack of passion.
I'm glad you brought this one up, Jenny, and we're going to follow this one through, and we're going to call it a day. And then we have so much more to cover on this topic. We're going to go into it the next time, but I've talked about this one a lot, and it gets me because so many times, and I call it the lifer kid. Okay. So it's the kid that's born, and the parents say the dad's a big soccer player or hockey player, whatever the sport is, and the kid's growing up. The first set of onesies the kid has when he's born has that team, dad's favorite team on it. You're gonna grow up, you're gonna be on this team, you're gonna be a hockey player, you're gonna be a soccer player, you're gonna do this, you're gonna do this. So the kid's growing up the whole time thinking, yes, I'm gonna be the best hockey player ever. That's what my dad keeps telling me. And of course they ended up they're starting at a young age. The parents have them playing whatever sport it is from the time they can walk, or sometimes even before they can walk. They got a little hockey stick in their hand, or they're kicking a soccer ball around.
Yeah.
And
It's cute, by
at some point, what was that?
it's cute, by the way. It's not like it's a bad thing. It's cute.
And you know what? And it's not bad that this child is active and doing something, and they're learning coordination, and they're learning skills, and they're starting at such a young age, so they're picking stuff up. But as soon as they start to get a little older, and they're like, hey, this wasn't really what I wanted to do. It's fun, but they're doing okay. And then as they start at the young age, they're usually heads and tails above the other kids. And then the other kids, the passionate ones, are coming up behind them and struggling and fighting and learning and pushing themselves to get better because they really want it. And I call it this lifer that's been growing up in the sport. Haven't developed that desire and that love for it. And they will get to the point where the other kids start passing them, and they've never had to work that hard. And again, this doesn't happen in every situation, but it does happen a lot that kid who was put into that sport through the parents just has never learned to work and push themselves through it like these other kids, and they fade out.
Yep.
And to your point exactly, where parents, yes, check yourselves, make sure that this kid is not passionate about what they're doing. It's not a blind passion that was given to them, that they inherited from their parents. That's a great point.
Yep. And I can't wait for us to finish this. I know we have to stop for today's episode of Tell Me Why, but I wanted to make sure that everyone knows to tune in because we have more than enough topics to cover sports and how to think about it and get yourself through it and become great and become your best, right? You're great. And sometimes that's going to look different for each person. So I just want to make sure that people remember to tune in for the future episodes of Tell Me Why, because I think they're gonna get something pretty amazing out of it for each person, and it probably will be different. But
Right. And we welcome your comments. Feel free to add comments, questions on our message board, and we will get back to you. Next week, we'll be continue on with passion because again, it's a big one for me. It's something that I've seen out of the top athletes out there. This one ranks so high, so strong for so many of these top goats out there, the
yep,
greatest of all time. They have this to no end.
yep,
Next week, we will start with passion and desire versus talent. And I think that's a big discussion area. And, talent is great. There's three strong things there. And I think it's going to be another great discussion.
I do too. I hope you guys tune in and, of course, download and make sure that you subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss anything. And, you can listen to it and enjoy it at your leisure.
We'll continue to bring you the 6 character traits of great athletes and discuss the whys about it and how to develop those traits within yourself. Jenny, thanks again for joining me today on this. It's been a great conversation. And podcast listeners out there, feel free to add your comments and subscribe. We look forward to seeing you next week.
All right, guys, we'll talk to you soon. Have a good one.